I'm Mark Broom. Let's start by taking a look at the day's headlines. Nothing new. US President Donald Trump insists he isn't concerned by a new report which says North Korea is operating secret missile testing sites. President Moon Jae-in in Singapore, the South Korean leader, is in the Southeast Asian city-state for a slew of economy-related meetings. We have the latest from our correspondent tagging along with the president. Plus, no light at the end of the tunnel. The government's monthly employment report paints yet another gloomy picture for South Korea's job seekers. Our top story this morning, US President Donald Trump says he was not surprised by a recent widely circulated report on North Korea's secretive missile bases, insisting there was nothing new in those findings. The top US security advisor echoed his boss's remarks, saying President Trump is also ready for a second summit with the North Korean leader Kimjang. Our Kim Hyo-sun starts us off.
President Trump's response was short and to the point. He said there is nothing new in the report published this week by the Washington-based think tank, the Center for Strategic and International Studies. He took to Twitter to say he's fully aware of the missile base that is referred to in the report, stressing nothing out of the ordinary is happening. Trump also criticized a New York Times article which cited the report as fake news as it spread incorrect information. U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton also confirmed there was nothing new in the CSIS report. He also said President Trump is ready for a second summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Such a swift response shows Washington's willingness to show Pyongyang that its stance is unchanged and it's still open to denuclearization talks. There has been criticism of the way the CSIS report was portrayed in the media, especially by the New York Times, that called the findings, quote, great deception by the North. The report is also based on satellite images taken in March, which was 3 months before the first ever summit between the leaders of North Korea and the U.S. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, shortly after the CSIS report on North Korean missile bases was published, the South Korean presidential office also said there's nothing new in there. The spokesperson for the Blue House says Seoul and Washington have been aware of the missile bases through their military satellites, and the allies will continue to monitor them. He also stressed the report shows why negotiations between Pyongyang and Washington must take place soon to eradicate any threat posed by the regime. On the specific missile site referred to in the report, he explained it's only for short-range missiles and has nothing to do with the development of ICBMs. US Vice President Mike Pence and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe held talks in Tokyo on Tuesday. Pence and Abe reaffirmed their two countries' strong alliance and discussed a range of issues from bilateral trade to, as you'd expect, North Korea. Park Hee-jun reports.
The U.S. and Japan have reaffirmed their firm stance on the issue of North Korea's denuclearization. U.S. Vice President Mike Pence and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe met in Tokyo on Tuesday, where they agreed on the need to maintain diplomatic and economic pressure on the North until its complete denuclearization. Pence also urged all nations in the Indo-Pacific region to do the same.
The pressure campaign will continue. The sanctions will remain in full force until we achieve the final, fully verified denuclearization of North Korea.
We agree that it is necessary to continue to fully implement the UN resolutions on North Korea towards the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
The U.S. also agreed to bring up the issue of Japanese abductees in North Korea when President Donald Trump and his North Korean counterpart Kim Jong-un have their next summits. The two sides also discussed trade, with Pence urging Japan to reduce the bilateral trade imbalance. Pence called Tokyo an indispensable trade partner, but also criticized Japan, saying that it exports millions of cars to the U.S., but American auto and farm products face many barriers to compete fairly in Japanese markets. He also welcomed President Trump and Prime Minister Abe's decision to begin negotiations on their bilateral free trade agreements. The trade talks are expected to begin early next year. And the two say they will continue to work closely together to confront China's increased influence in the region. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Now, President Moon Jae-in is in Singapore for a slew of meetings with leaders from the ASEAN region. Officials say they expect the South Korean leader to tout the benefits of his signature New Southern policy, which aims to sharply boost ties between Seoul and Southeast Asia. Our Shin Se-min, who is travelling with President Moon, files this report from Singapore.
President Moon Jae-in kicks off his 4-day stay in Singapore with bilateral meetings with leaders of Brunei, Laos, and Russia on the sidelines of the ASEAN and East Asian summits. The South Korean leader is likely to trumpet his administration's New Southern policy that he introduced last year. It's one of President Moon's top foreign policy objectives that seeks to establish stronger political and economic cooperation with countries to the south and southeast of the Korean Peninsula. The president is set to propose measures that'll help accelerate the policy, such as hosting a special Korea-ASEAN summit next year and establishing a Korea-Mekong summit to bring Seoul closer to countries like Cambodia and Laos. President Moon will also attend summits related to ASEAN like the ASEAN Plus 3 summit, including Korea, China, and Japan, as well as the East Asian summit. The South Korean leader's two-nation tour that includes a trip to Papua New Guinea will also give him a prime opportunity to win further support for his push for peace on the Korean Peninsula.
While much of the president's 4-day stay here in Singapore is likely to be on promoting his new Southern policy, the one-on-one with Russian President Vladimir Putin later this Wednesday afternoon is likely to be on North Korea, possibly even on the progress made on a visit to Seoul by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Singapore.
Now, the two Koreas and the UN command have conducted a 2-day joint inspection of surveillance equipment in the Joint Security Area, the JSA, in the demilitarized zone. On Tuesday, the three sides discussed ways to rearrange equipment to guarantee visitors free movement in the once highly restricted area. Kan Hyung-woo reports.
The two Koreas and the United Nations Command will rearrange the surveillance equipment at the Joint Security Area and share information from their respective devices. Military officials from the three sides held working-level talks on Monday at the Freedom House on the South Korean side of the border village of Panmunjom. After that meeting, and on Tuesday, they inspected the site together to see where surveillance equipment has been installed and what kind of devices are being used in each other's area. While doing so, they discussed how to rearrange the existing equipment and where more devices should be installed for security personnel stationed in each other's area and to enable visitors to move freely within the JSA in the future. The three sides also talked about technical issues to figure out how to share video footage from their respective devices. Participating in the 2-day inspection were security experts from the three sides along with military officials. Kan Hyung-woo, Arirang News.
A 7-member high-level delegation from Pyongyang is making a 4-day visit to the south starting today. They are members of the North Korea Asia-Pacific Peace Committee, coming primarily to attend an international conference on Friday. The conference is hosted by a South Korean organization in Gyeonggi-do province, and participants from the two Koreas and Japan will be discussing the forced mobilization of Koreans during Japan's colonial rule. The delegation is drawing attention because it includes two senior North Korean officials who have been involved in Pyongyang-Washington negotiations and inter-Korean discussions, respectively. While some anticipate the duo's trip could lead to meetings with the Seoul government, the Unification Ministry here says there are no such plans, as of now anyway, as their visit is of a civic nature. Time for a look at the stories making headlines around the world, and we start with the huge story out of Europe. UK and EU officials have agreed on a draft Brexit deal after more than a year of talks. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Noah Aram. So, Aram, Brexit talks have been turbulent, to say the least, in recent months. Are we really going to see any kind of progress from this point?
Well, Margaret, it's hard to tell at the moment. We have to remember this is only a draft text that has been agreed at a technical level, so we are yet to see if any real progress is made. Prime Minister Theresa May must now try to get the deal approved by her cabinet and, in the toughest test of all, by Parliament. She has called for a cabinet meeting to be held on Wednesday afternoon local time. That'll be 2 p.m. to be exact, and will be meeting her ministers one by one. She has the tough task of trying to sell the deal to her divided cabinet, with the risk of seeing some senior members resign. The pro-Brexit faction of her Conservative Party has already attacked the agreement, accusing May of surrendering to the EU. Tory Brexiteers have urged senior ministers to block the draft agreement and have also said they will vote it down in Parliament. The thorniest issue that's been dogging talks for months now is how to avoid a hard Irish border after Brexit. Most critics say the fix for the border issue comes at a high price for the rest of the UK, which will be locked into EU trade rules for years. EU officials will also be looking at the draft at the same time as May's cabinet meeting, but many are already sceptical. In other news, CNN has filed a lawsuit against President Trump and several of his aides after the White House revoked senior journalist Jim Acosta's press credentials. The network said it has asked a Washington district court for an immediate restraining order requiring Acosta's press pass to be returned. CNN said the Trump administration's actions violated Acosta's constitutional rights. The judge of the district court has given the defendants until Wednesday morning local time to file a response, and a hearing has been scheduled for the afternoon. The White House revoked Acosta's press pass last week, just hours after he got into quite a testy exchange with President Trump. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders responded to the suit by saying it was just more, quote, grandstanding from CNN, and that the Trump administration will vigorously defend against the suit. The International Atomic Energy Agency has urged Japan to quickly tackle a build-up of contaminated water at its Fukushima nuclear power plant. After a week-long review, an IAEA team said Tuesday there were still massive amounts of treated but still radioactive water stored in tanks on the compound. The experts said that was only a temporary solution and that the water must be removed urgently. The reactors suffered meltdowns following a massive earthquake and tsunami 7 years ago. Since then, Japanese officials are yet to agree on what to do with the radioactive water. One option is the controlled release of the water into the ocean, which nuclear experts actually say is safe and the only realistic option. However, fishermen and residents strongly oppose that proposal.
Now, despite the South Korean government's efforts to boost the job market, the latest figures show the situation is not getting any better. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the overall unemployment rate was 3.5% in October, up 0.3 percentage points from the same period last year. This is the highest figure since 2005, 13 years ago. But the number of employed people in October was also up 64,000 on year in October to reach 27.09 million. And in September, the number of newly added jobs reached 45,000 after staying below the 10,000 mark in July and August. South Korea's Securities and Futures Commission is to announce its final decision on Wednesday on the alleged accounting irregularities by Samsung BioLogics, the biopharmaceutical business arm of Samsung Group. Now, Samsung BioLogics is suspected of breaching accounting standards to inflate its net profit ahead of going public in 2015. If it's found the company had intentionally inflated its profits, the trading of Samsung BioLogics shares on the country's benchmark Kospi, worth a combined $4.4 billion, could be discontinued and subject to punitive examination for delisting. The verdict is expected to affect some 80,000 minority shareholders. Japan has launched a complaint to the World Trade Organization to contest what it says is illegal financial support given by South Korea to commercial shipbuilders. According to the WTO filing that was published on Tuesday, Japan says South Korea had implemented a range of measures to help its shipbuilders with direct financing that enabled shipbuilders to remain afloat in prolonged periods of otherwise unsustainable low pricing. They added South Korea also provided sales support to the shipbuilders and their customers, which helped stimulate sales during periods of low demand. Now, with the colder temperatures, air pollution levels are skyrocketing yet again in China as hundreds of millions of people there start cranking up the heat. Beijing and parts of China are blanketed in a thick layer of smog, leading to the government issuing a yellow alert. Lee-Seung-jae reports.
The Beijing Municipal Air Pollution Emergency Response Office on Tuesday issued a yellow alert for smog. Under Beijing's three-tier warning system, the yellow alert is the least severe, followed by orange and red. However, a yellow alert still triggers a series of compulsory emergency responses, including the suspension of outdoor construction operations to reduce dust, the restriction of heavy pollution vehicles, or the suspension of production in smokestack industries. The pollution is expected to persist throughout the week, affecting other parts of China, such as Tianjin and the Hebei regions, which are forecast to see moderate to severe air pollution until Thursday.
Every time there's smog, my throat hurts, phlegm continues to build, and my nose hurts too. There's nothing I can do at the moment.
Environment officials in China says the buildup of smog is due to the high humidity and weak winds, leading to poor air diffusion. But others say, with the heating system activated last week, this too is the source of much of the pollution. The good news is that with cold air and rain expected from the northern region of China on Thursday, the smog is forecast to decrease as well. Lee-Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, starting from later this month, Koreans make kimchi to keep their refrigerator nicely stocked through the cold winter months. It has been a long-held tradition for communities to make and share large quantities of the staple dish, often giving it out to relatives and sometimes friends. Our Hong Yu has more on the cost, though, of making kimchi this year.
Late autumn is a busy season for many South Korean households as November is the month of Kimjang, the traditional process of making kimchi. This year, a family of 4 will spend approximately $235 to buy the vegetables, spices, and other ingredients for kimchi at a traditional market. If they choose to shop at a supermarket, it will cost them around $272. Data from Korea Price Information, a pricing agency, shows the cost of each ingredient. Cabbage, the main ingredient of kimchi, costs around $3 per head. Its cost had increased during summer due to the heat wave. But the prices are stable now that the weather is cool and the cultivation area of cabbages has increased. The price of white radish and young radish, which are used for other types of kimchi, have also stayed stable at around $3 and $3.50 per bundle, respectively. But the prices of minor ingredients such as red pepper powder and ginger have increased. South Korea had a hotter summer than usual this year, and the cold season also came earlier, resulting in a fall in production. Red pepper powder currently costs more than $16 per 600 grams, and ginger costs almost $9 per 800 grams. According to Korean Weather Service K-Weather, late November and early December is the best time of the year to make kimchi, as kimchi tastes best when preserved between 0 and 4 degrees Celsius. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
Now let's switch gears somewhat. A renowned German director is embarking on an ambitious 3-year-long project right here in the South Korean capital of Seoul. The goal to stage one of the most challenging operatic works ever written. Won Jong-hwan with the details.
The Ring of the Nibelungen was first performed in Seoul in 2005 as part of a world tour. But now Richard Wagner's 19th century masterpiece is being produced in South Korea for the first time. German painter, director, and stage designer Achim Freyer is unveiling the show in South Korea on Wednesday evening at Seoul Art Center. The show depicts the fatal struggles of gods, men, and mythical creatures to secure a magic ring that gives its owner the power to rule the world. The massive opera is divided into 4 parts and will be staged over a 1.5-year period. The prelude opera, The Rheingold, will be performed this month, and the remaining 3 acts, The Valkyrie, Siegfried, and Twilight of the Gods, will in turn be staged in June and December next year and May 2020, respectively. Freyer has produced versions of the opera in Germany and the US, but he says the Korean version is different from his 2 previous productions.
When I do a piece, it is very new and all is other, I cannot repeat. Why? We are in Korea and it's a total other situation and total other impressions.
As a German citizen who has experienced the reality of national division, Freyer says he tweaked the original production by attempting to weave the politics of his own time into the Korean version. And to try to show an authentic image of peace and unification, the production's organizers say they are trying to invite North Korean singers to take part.
We are currently in touch with Pyongyang through the North Korean embassy in Berlin. We couldn't cast North Korean singers for the first part of the performance since it overlapped with the 70th anniversary of the nation's founding. But we will keep trying as there are more years left for them to join our series.
The first part of the opera will run until Sunday, before a 6-month preparation period to showcase the second part of the epic in June next year. Won Jong-hwan, Arirang News.
Good morning. Today is the orientation day for the college entrance exam 수능. So students will be dropping by designated test sites to see where they will be taking tomorrow's big test. The weather looks promising for the next 2 days in most parts, but dress accordingly as there will be big temperature differences. And as mentioned earlier, Beijing is covered in a thick blanket of toxic smog, and that will surely have an impact on the Korean peninsula. High levels of fine and ultra-fine dust are in the forecast for Chungcheong-namdo province today, while more western regions, including Seoul, will be dusty tomorrow. And daily highs for the day will range between 14 to 17 degrees, while regions in the east coast will see light showers until the afternoon. In Seoul, Daejeon, and Gyeongju will get up to 15 degrees this afternoon. Chuncheon will be slightly breezier, topping out at 14 degrees. Now, colder air will blow in and we'll notice much colder conditions starting next week, with morning lows dropping to near freezing. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now on this Wednesday morning here in Seoul. Stay tuned to Arirang TV. We have our next newscast coming up at noon Korea time as well. That's with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.
Overseas TV Audience Survey. Arirang TV and Gallup Korea are conducting research on viewer opinions. Your honest answers will be used for the development of Arirang TV. From November 1st to the 24th, you can participate in the survey through our website, www.arirang.com. We will send an autographed CD to randomly chosen respondents as a token of our appreciation. We are waiting for your participation.
Literally speaking, the mind engraved on paper. Paper comforter. Where to go now? The man slowly inclining his head in the direction of his soul's destination. Opens his mouth, looking dead, yet not stone dead. Then shuts it. Vested with a sheet of paper, the man crossing the abysmal heart of winter.
인공지능 사회 속에서 종이가 죽었다 사라진다는 것, 이런 시대에 시는 뭘 해야 될까? 인간이 가지고 있는 아주 순수하고 본연의 어떤 정신적인 어떤 영랑, 힘, 위로 이런 것을 어디에 찾을 수가 있을까? 그 대상이 바로 종이였던 겁니다.
Protecting paper is protecting people. Arirang.